I wanted to share some research today that we're doing around diversity, particularly when it comes to gender in the workplace. And actually, Al, as I was doing this research, I was thinking about the time you and I met. And I remember I was very pregnant and we were talking about kids, and you were telling me about your daughter and the hopes that you have about how the workplace is going to change by the time she starts working, and just about the different work that we were doing to change the world, really make it better for everyone, but particularly take out some of the inequalities that we see about women. Well, then this year happened, and I won't go into the detail, but I swear it breaks my heart every day when I watch the news and new numbers came out on Friday, just how COVID is impacting women in general, how it's impacting caretakers, how it's impacting mothers. There's just all different kinds of research, and it shows even the great importance of this kind of work today. It's always been critical, but just how increasingly important it's becoming as the days go by, particularly during this challenging time. And for me personally, most of my career I've actually spent in technology. And so when you look at the numbers, the challenges that we've had for women in technology are not new. And we've had so many headlines around not there being enough women in STEM, not enough young girls choosing that for education, but then also so much research around what happens when women do go into organizations and when they're outnumbered by men, and how long do they stay and why do they leave, and why do they leave in much bigger numbers than their male counterparts, right? And so my career really dedicated to thinking about that and thinking about how can we really make a more inclusive workplace for everybody, but what's the difference when it comes to women, and what's the difference when it comes to organizations that are in the technology industry? And so that brings me to Globant, where I have been working for the last 3.5 years. And I'll introduce it real quick because the data that I will share in my presentation is particular to Globant. So I think some of the context is important. Globant was founded in 2003 out of Buenos Aires, Argentina. It is a technology services company. We have clients all over the world. And we've actually been one of the fastest growing companies globally. We're publicly traded. We are in 16 countries today. We're over 12,000 employees, and in normal times in over 50 offices. Today, of course, in over 12,000 offices because each one of us is at home. But one of the things that I really loved about Globant is not only the vision that the organization has and how our founders think about the clients and that relationship, but also during my interview process, I had an opportunity to meet with one of the founders, and the way that he talked about the employees, the care that I felt from him was just absolutely incredible. And so I thought, these guys really get it. And I want to be a part of this organization, and I want to help make a difference internally, but I also really want to help make a difference all around the world that they're really passionate about and investing in. And so one of the key statistics that I looked at when thinking about what do I want to share with all these amazing people that are online with us today is when we started to do this diversity study and we started to look at women in this particular case in Globant. As we mentioned, the economy recently has been really challenging, but for women in technology has been challenging for a long time. And what I wanted to do is share some of the things that I've seen we've done well internally and some of the things that have worked well with our clients. And so when we looked at our turnover statistics, we looked at two key things for Globant. We looked at the annual turnover rate, and we looked at what's been happening in the recent months. And the first numbers that caught my attention was that women are actually staying at Globant longer than men. Their turnover rate is lower than it is of their male counterparts. And I thought, how amazing is that? I was just sharing the statistics, and I was reading about all of these different statistics at organizations that have such a big challenge retaining their people. And here we're seeing that women are actually staying longer. So while we continue increasing diversity, while we continue to look and attract more women to Globant, we're actually creating an inclusive environment. And I thought, yes, it's so good to see, because there's so many different initiatives that we have. And it's really see that. And what we particularly wanted to look at were the last few months and say, but it's been so hard. It's been so incredibly hard. And our people team has done an incredible job of supporting all of the employees and transitioning us and making sure that we're successful. Is that working? Is it working across the board? And is it working for women in particular? And we just reran the September numbers because the month ended. I wanted to share the most recent data, and we saw that it is working. We're not seeing an increasing number of women leaving Globant. And so to me, this was a really good story. And so why is this happening, right? What can I share with our audience here that are maybe some things to think of work in their organizations? So I have 25 minutes today, and if I shared all the different initiatives and employee journeys and the places where we touch how we attract women and retain women, it wouldn't be enough time. So I wanted to show this graph that shows where we impact the individuals in each part of the journey, but also share, we have a publicly available site where we're always updating the different initiatives. We are really huge proponents around sharing our story, sharing what we're tried, sharing what's working well, because that way other organizations, we can all learn from each other and really move the needle a lot faster. So we are investing in education of young women. We are investing in education of our current employees. We're looking at all the different leadership positions, making sure that everybody has an equal opportunity. We're learning from each other. We recently launched a Globant University for our employees. It has a number of different courses, but also focus on diversity and inclusion. So that's all I will say about that. Again, I could talk about it all day, but there is a link for those who are interested in learning a little bit more about all the different initiatives. And we actually recently launched awards for women in technology. It is running until November 4th, and it's open to the public. It is an opportunity for people to nominate women that they've been really inspired by. And it's 4 different categories. It's all the way from person making a difference at the beginning of their career all the way to executives making change. So I included a link. If you, as I'm talking about this, if somebody comes to mind and you're saying, I really feel like this person should be considered, please go and check it out. It's available to everyone. And again, it's just one more way that we wanted to make sure that we're celebrating women and giving them visibility. So the data that I'm going to talk about today, I mentioned, falling in love with Globant's culture even during my interview process. And a part of that I learned was about 13 years ago, our founders, as the organization was growing, they were really concerned that going from a startup to, at that point, they were about 300 people. For the founders, it was so incredibly important that they knew everybody, that everybody was really visible in the organization, that every person took such pride in being a Glober and felt like they were making a difference, that they actually built a technology. And I would say the probably easiest way to describe it is a recognition technology, but it's really so much more than that. It's an ability to celebrate every single action that a person has done and make it completely visible to everybody in the organization. Why is that important? Why is that important, particularly for the journey of women? Is here I actually cited 2 different Harvard Business Review articles out of, I absolutely love all of their research, but these 2 particularly for our talk today. And one, the title was "To Succeed in Tech, Women Need More Visibility." And I thought, this is actually a perfect platform for that, because no matter where you are in the world, no matter what job title you have, how long you've been with the organization, every one of your achievements is going to be visible to somebody else in the organization. And every single person has the ability to recognize somebody else on the incredible actions that they've made. So that's one part where this technology really powers our vision of giving people visibility, and in turn actually is quite good for the career progression that women need. The second one is around the secret of being a successful networker. And there is probably an infinite number of research around how women relate to others and how women connect to others. And there's some findings that say that women tend to relate more to their friends and somebody who's like them, and don't really think about networking inside the organization, building relationships with those who can maybe help them more down the road. The men are the ones that are generally more open and confident to connect to each other. And so as a part of this platform, what we wanted to do is make sure that everybody in the organization had that transparency. As we measured connections, but the amount of recognitions that were exchanged between different people, we made each person's network in the organization visible to others. And why is that important? Here I have one example of one of my dear colleagues, Sabina, and this woman is just incredible. She's one of those people that you meet and you're just in awe because of the incredibly good heart she has, the incredible brilliance that she has, and how she relates to people, and how good she is at her job. I mean, just all of it. And so when I think about somebody like her and so many of my colleagues who are similar to her, what this technology also helps me do is go in and understand a little bit more about them. So of course I can connect with them one-on-one, but here I can also see the stories that people have told about them, the incredible things that they've accomplished, and I can understand their network better. So if I say Sabina is certainly a role model to me, she is certainly somebody who I would love to be like one day, I can go in and say, what does her network look like? Who is she meeting with? Who is she connected with? So that way I can understand as I grow my career inside of Globant, how can I really build a successful network where I'm connecting with people where they can help me learn new skills, they can keep me in mind for different opportunities, etc. So I wanted to introduce this technology because it's actually, I believe, one of the key things that's helped us bring a lot of the different initiatives that we have in Globant to life. And it's allowed us to measure inclusivity in a very different way than we had been able to before. So another really exciting finding, the study that we did was huge. I can't even explain to you how many different analysis we did to understand the inclusivity of women at Globant and the diversity numbers. I'm just sharing a few highlights that particularly made us take a step back and say, wow, this is really interesting to us and some of the news that we want to share with the world. So when we looked at networks at Globant, so again, we're in a technology industry. We are about 23% women, 77% men by diversity numbers. But when you look at the connections, women were actually connecting with significantly more people. Now, again, this is measured by recognition. So this is a different view than looking at how many meetings are you in, how many emails are you exchanging, which are all great metrics. But for us, the metric of recognition is more indicative around the relationship you have with somebody and how much somebody values you, how you value them, the level of trust. And so we saw that even in an organization where by numbers, men were now outnumbering women, women felt really comfortable in this environment to connect with others and build those kinds of relationships. And we thought, wow, that is probably also one of the key indicators that impacts our turnover numbers and impacts the reason why people are staying at Globant, because women feel comfortable creating these kinds of networks. They don't feel like they're outnumbered or they're part of a boys club. They actually feel like they're in an organization where they're making an impact and they have a really good network of professionals. Now, another big body of research that I've looked at before is the Rite of Passage. And I don't think this is just true for women, but it also certainly shows up a lot in gender literature, is that if I, as a woman, worked incredibly hard and went and got all these degrees and worked long hours or whatever it was, whatever it took for me to succeed, if I had to make sacrifices in my career and it didn't come easy, why should I make it easy for somebody else, right? They should go through all of those hardships to earn what I had to earn myself, right? And so that kind of mentality is particularly challenging because, especially as women, if we think about things that way, this glass ceiling, glass walls, everything that's holding us back will be so strong because we will not be helping each other where we need to be. So another piece of data that we looked at is out of these networks that people create, who are the different individuals relating to? And again, if you think about the 23-77 split that we have in the organization, we're seeing that both men and women are connecting with women more than the average number of employees, but women are doing even more so. So again, this was as we were going through all the different charts and all the different data analysis, this was another yes moment. And we thought, wow, how incredible that we've created this atmosphere that all are actually helping pull each other and helping co-elevate each other and making each other so incredible. another positive way to measure our culture. And the next that we looked at is the reciprocity of that visibility. So I actually recently read a book by Keith Ferrazzi called Leading Without Authority. And for those of you who haven't read it, I would highly recommend it. I love his philosophy of really making people shine. It's a lot about relationships and how you build your informal network at work to be able to get things done that you need to get done. But it's also about really lifting people in front of others. And when they do something really good, making that known. And another thing that we found is that in this atmosphere where women were so incredibly comfortable recognizing their peers and so incredibly comfortable giving themselves visibility through that and co-elevating others, they were receiving that in return. So there was this great reciprocal relationship where not only did they have a greater breadth of those individuals in their network, but they were proactively reaching out to a lot of different people, which again, in the spirit of creating a very positive organization for everyone, particularly for women, that was another really strong finding for us. So what we also wanted to look at, again, there's so much different research and so much different theories and philosophies when it comes to gender, is who is visible to executives? Who do executives co-elevate when it comes to women? And so we have more levels than just 3 when we look at career transitions and everything in Globant. But for the sake of making data a little more clear, I created 3 different categories here. And out of all the women employees, we put them in 3 different levels, right? About 17% at the entry level, about 18% at the executive level, and about 66% in the mid-level, right? That's how all the women that are at Globant, that's how they shake out in the bell curve in their different roles. And then when we looked at it as out of male and female executives, who are they providing recognition to? So who is visible to them and who are they co-elevating as a part of their organization? And so we found something really interesting here is if you think about our day-to-day work, a lot of times we are really relating to those who are in our general circle. So who are you in the meetings with? Who are you working on different projects with? And a lot of times, depending on how your organization is set up, if you're an executive, a lot of times the majority of your meetings are with executives or maybe with some of your colleagues at the mid-level, but there's not as much opportunity oftentimes as we'd like for our top to our newer employees. But what we saw here in this data is that actually partly thanks to this Star Me Up technology is that executives did have visibility of individuals in different levels, that they were providing recognition to the women in entry level, to the women in mid-level. Now, of course, there's always an opportunity to improve. And again, I think some of the peer-to-peer interaction is natural, where we're seeing a little bit more recognition there. But it shows us there is this interaction, and it shows us that it is an area that we can amp up and make sure that there is more. And why is this important? A lot of times what we've seen in data is that women tend to leave technology at the mid-level. And so we want to make sure that we're not losing them there, that we're not only paying attention once you made it to the executive level, that we're retaining you, or what is your experience like at the beginning of your career, but that there's this interaction, there's this visibility. And also what this helps do is those individuals that are really putting their heart on the line every day, they're really giving their all, they are the shining stars. Again, no matter how long they've been with the organization, no matter what their job title is. But if I have a colleague that's absolutely brilliant and I'm recognizing them, they're going to be visible across the organization. And so it really helps with these very organic, natural retention strategies and helping people across the different levels build those relationships. And so you can imagine we looked at all the different sample sizes, all the different interactions. But to me, again, this particularly stood out as an important metric to look at, and also way to follow the organization. And I'll share just one more group of examples, and then we'll go to Q&A, because I know that we don't have too much more time left. So a lot of times in culture, I also get asked, well, what happens about country culture? We know that organizations have a really strong culture, but we know that Mexico can be very different than Germany, can be very different in India, can be different in the United States. How do you manage that? And so for us, one of the statistics we talked about was that women at Globant, on average, have more relationships than men do, have a greater network than men do. But when we looked at each individual country, one place actually stood out, and that was India. So in India, men had the same number of relationships as the average, but women had fewer. And so we're still digging into the data to understand a little bit of the whys, understand is it the country culture that's impacting some of that. But in the meantime, what we do is look at some organizational network analysis and say, just because they're different in the average, how do those relationships still look? And so we compared India, that had a little bit different dynamics, to Mexico, that was closer to the average. And we saw, okay, everybody's still mixing. We're not seeing these big pockets of men interacting with men only, women interacting with women only. So even when there were some differences in the number of networks, there was still really great crossover between how people were interacting. In Mexico, talking about grouping, this one group jumped out at me, and I thought, oh, what's going on in here? It's a little bit more male than female. Why are they being isolated? Is that something that we should pay attention to? And again, when we took a closer look, it wasn't. It's something that, because Globant works with a lot of different organizations, this was actually just one of our clients or one of our accounts. So naturally, people are more connected there, but they're not in an island, they're not isolated. So this is the beauty of O&A, is that you can very quickly spot patterns, and then you can start to either go down a path with a concern, but be able to solve it quicker, or on the good end, put your mind at ease. And so the last example I wanted to show is going back to the original O&A from India and Mexico. One of the things that I loved is when we looked in the heart, in the center of each one of these, there were these strong red dots. In India, there was also a blue one, another red one. In Mexico, this prominent red one. And I thought, who is that? Who is this person that's in the center of it, really keeping everybody together? And because Mexico was more of an isolated situation with one specific person, I looked and I saw that it was actually the people business partners. And so that's another recommendation that I would share for any organization looking to further their culture, strengthen their culture. It is so impactful when you have a team waking up and thinking about that every day. Thinking about how are people relating, are we creating an inclusive culture? It really makes a difference, and we're seeing that in our data. Again, we're seeing a lot of connectivity, but we're seeing that person right in the center. And so I thought about, I wonder how this team is interacting just amongst themselves, just this culture business partner team. And this is the first time an O&A gave me a heart. And so I thought, okay, I'm done analyzing for now. They're so incredibly well connected. The relationships are really strong. And so you can see that those individuals who are carrying the diversity and inclusion and really making that a priority for our organization are really living and breathing that every day. And we can see that in the stats. And so what's next for us? There's a lot. We have a commitment to have 50-50 women and non-binary gender by 2025 at Globant. We're continuing to monitor and ensure inclusivity as demographics in our organization change. So we want to make sure that we continue to be more diverse, but that we are never losing the inclusivity part as a part of that. Also in the Star Me Up technology, we're empowering every different area to be able to look at their own area. So it's not just up to the culture business partners. It's not just up to the people team, but every leader has the visibility to know, how is my team functioning, to make sure they're promoting an inclusive environment for all of their team members at all time. And there's just so much more. So these are just a few different examples. And then finally, before we go to any Q&A, I wanted to make sure to recognize my absolutely incredible team that worked on this report. I usually have the pleasure to be the one to share all of our findings and to get the stage with you, Al, and your colleagues, but we just had the most brilliant team helping pull this through. And so I'm a huge proponent, and I talked a lot about visibility inside the organization, but now that I had an opportunity to share it outside too, I wanted to do that as well. So that's all I had to share today. please, every time that I'm in one of these conferences, I talk about the importance of all of us collaborating, all of us moving the world to a better place together. Feel free to reach out to me via email. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you're interested in learning more about Star Me Up and how it could help your organization, let us know as well too. We are sponsors of PAFOW. We do have a booth with a brilliant group of people waiting to answer your questions. So with that, Al, I will come back to you for any time we might have left for Q&A. I don't know if it's much, but hopefully we can get to some.
Well, there's a couple questions, and I'm going to synthesize some that came on Slido. And before I do, however, thank you. I mean, it's amazing work. It's amazingly important. And just the fact that, and you've heard me say this before, but for those who haven't, it's my belief after the basics, we want three things as human beings. We want to be seen, we want to be heard, and we want to be empowered. And what I just heard you're doing through your approach is you're elevating women, you're making it visible, their great work and their intentions, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And even as someone has, and we're going to talk about allyship throughout the couple of days, and mostly with regards to Black Lives Matter, but I would also arguably apply to women and elevating women, particularly young women. So, beautiful, congratulations. And so I just want to ask you, in synthesizing the questions that came in, is how did this come about? Like, I'm very curious at this point for many, is it's one thing for you and I to sit and, hey, this would be a great idea. It's another thing to actually get it to where you got it, where it actually is living, it's happening. So how did that happen real quickly? I mean, whose idea was it? Did it come down from above? Is something that you put together and crafted and went and build a product? Because you all as a firm build stuff. You build tools like that. So can you explain just briefly how this came about and how it actually just brought to life?
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure because it came up from our founders. And I was mentioning that in my interview process, I got to meet one of them. His name is Guibert, and he was telling me how there were four guys that, met at a Buenos Aires bar and talked about this company during one of the economic downturns, but how much the people inside the organization were important to him. And they were the ones that said, we don't want to lose the visibility. We want to create a platform where every single one of our employees feels like the founder and they feel like they're making a difference. I want them to be visible. I want them to feel appreciated. I want them to love their work. And I was looking at him. I was like, this guy's for real. You hear sometimes people make up these stories, but the way he talked about it, I was just in awe because at this point, Globant's still growing very quickly, but I joined 3 years ago. We were already a little bit over 6,000 employees on the New York Stock Exchange. As a business, they were very successful. But one of the first things he chose to talk to me about was just putting employees first. And what was interesting is today we have a number of global clients, but that actually happened by chance. Originally, our business unit was never supposed to be a business. It was supposed to be for Globant. It was supposed to be all about Globant employees. And as the organization was growing, people were coming to us and saying, how are you so successful? How many startups do you know around the world? How many startups out of Argentina that never made it as big as Globant? What did you do differently? And it's interesting because if you hear any of our founders, if you hear any of our top leadership, they will talk about our culture first. The company, the business is incredible, but they will talk about the people first. And so I think that's partly why it's been successful, is because it was so altruistic. It was so not even thought about as a business line or as a story to tell people. But just as the world changed, we want each one of these individuals to love their work and to feel appreciated. So I don't know, to me, I've loved it from the day that I've joined to now, the different studies that we're doing and the different ways that we're advancing the business. It's just so genuine that it's just an absolute pleasure to be a part of.
So what I'm hearing is that they're walking the talk. They're actually doing things on the back end. It's cliche to say people are our most important asset, all that, but it's another thing to actually live that through your actions. Yes. And that's what I'm hearing the leaders are doing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Sanja, I mean, again, I could talk to you the rest of the day. Although both you and I, as much as we like to talk, I don't know if we could pull off another 6.5 hours or so. But I'm sure we'll get a chance. Yeah, again, thank you for your support. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for advocating women everywhere. And there's much more work to do, of course. So I look forward to partnering with you to make that happen. So thank you. And how can people learn more about you and Globant?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned we have a booth at the conference. So come by. I've shared my contact information. Sanja Licina, email me, message me on LinkedIn. Would love to know people's stories. And if there's any way that we can help companies have this kind of impact on their culture that we've enjoyed ourselves, it would be my true pleasure to partner and be able to do that. So thank you, Al, always for giving us a platform to share what we're doing, share what we're passionate about. And thank you for all the amazing things you're doing as a human and David. And it's an absolute pleasure and honor to be a part of the conference. So thank you so much for having us here.
Well, it's absolutely my pleasure. And thank you again. See you soon. Yeah. Be well down there.
See you soon.